The ancient Greeks were the first to begin beautifying interiors with ornate columns and mouldings shaped from plaster. And the idea really stuck, with decorative mouldings becoming a popular design feature in 17th century Europe, with Italian tradesmen in particular becoming famous for their plastering prowess. Nowadays, specialists in traditional plasterwork are a rare breed, with this skillful profession taking years to master. But that's who you'll need to hire to repair plaster mouldings in a heritage home, such as this one. To repair this damaged ceiling rose, the damaged area is first chiselled off to leave a flat surface area to work on. Screws are then partially driven into the ceiling, which will anchor the new moulding. The number of screws required depends on the size and weight of the moulding. Meanwhile, the plaster is prepared. The first component is lime compound, which is a mixture of calcium hydroxide and water. The plasterer uses a scraper to form a well in the material. Before filling the well with the mixture of roughly 3/4 water to 1/4 construction-grade glue. To this, the plasterer adds just the right amount of plaster of Paris, or powdered gypsum, which can also be used to make casts for broken bones. A trowel is now used to blend the lime compound, glue mixture and plaster of Paris. It takes years of experience to create the perfect blend with the correct consistency, which is now ready to be applied to the ceiling. The freshly mixed plaster is quite caustic when wet, so the plasterer wears gloves to minimise risk of irritation to the skin. Bonding glue has been applied to the repair area and the plasterer trowels on the plaster. Then a circular running mould is used to shape the plaster, which has a profile to match that of the existing moulding. The running mould is moved back and forth over the wet plaster to shape it. Any excess is carefully scraped away before a wet paintbrush is run over both the old and the new portions of the moulding. This makes the transition between the two appear seamless and smooths out any imperfections. To make the running moulds, a cross-section of the existing moulding is used to create a sheet metal template with the same profile. The template is then used to create a wooden template of the same shape, known as a stock. Once the stock has been sanded smooth, the metal template is screwed to it. The wood backing prevents the metal from bending as it's run over thick plaster. A wooden handle is then screwed to the stock. To make crown mouldings, the plasterer mounts a track to the wall to guide the running mould. Any anchor screws obstructing the path are driven a bit further into the ceiling. Bonding glue is then brushed onto the ceiling and allowed to set for 5 minutes. Plaster is now liberally applied, and the running mould is used to shape it. The process is repeated several times with additional plaster. After each coat, the plaster is left to harden for 20 minutes, which is just long enough for the previous layer to hold its shape. The final coat is applied by hand to fill in any crevices and imperfections. The running mould is then used to make one last pass. The wet plaster moulding can take up to 72 hours to dry, depending on its size and the humidity in the room. Only when the moulding is completely dry can the plasterer begin crafting the corner pieces, called mitres. Using the edge of the adjacent mouldings as a guide, he skillfully adds plaster before sculpting it and removing any excess. These steps are repeated until the mitre perfectly matches the moulding on either side. It's a slow and meticulous process that takes patience and an expert eye. But once the profile has been perfected, the edges are refined. Finally, the surface is blended with a wet brush, rendering the transition from mitre to moulding seamless. The end result is a newly restored ceiling, a rose by any other